The Florida Gators have done it again for the first time in July this time. Kendall Gervil, you are a Florida Gator.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day. Every day we are available daily and free for listening to the podcast and on YouTube. Happy Wednesday. I am Brandon Olsen. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all of my written work with New York Giants on SI. Find me every damn day here with Locked On Gators. And man, it feels good to be back live. It does. It's just, we got extra juice for it. This time, it stems because of defensive lineman Kendall Guervil committing to the Florida Gators 2026 recruiting class. And oh man, he's a hell of a player. 6'4", 6'5", depending on where you look, 315 pounds. A 4-star on all 4 platforms, which is soon going to be 3 platforms. Who's to say? Who cares? Also, by the way, can we just throw that one out there? Who gives a damn? But on 3, Kendall Gerville is a 4-star, 117th ranked player nationally, 12th defensive lineman, 13th player in the state of Florida. On 24/7, 77th player nationally, 12th defensive lineman in the country, 9th player in the state of Florida. ESPN, 269th ranked, 23rd defensive lineman in the country, 39th player in the state of Florida. And on Rivals, they don't really have their national rankings right now, I'm pretty sure, but 20th defensive lineman, 46th player in the state of Florida. All 4-star rankings there. And Florida lands a commit over Texas. And it feels good just because the timeline has been absolutely nuts with just crying and complaining about not landing commits for this reason, that reason, this reason. And it's just been a bunch of whining. And a lot of it, whenever Florida loses a commit, the timeline just goes, oh, well, they dropped the bag. I just want to throw that out there. Yes, Ryan, sunglasses on for Billy's sunglasses emojis. That's how you roll with it there. But I think that the addition of Kendall Gervil is huge. I think that having a defensive lineman added to this class that's actually quality is huge. We've talked about, by the way, let's call things what they are, right? Florida is likely going to lose a defensive lineman this Friday from their 2026 recruiting class. Jameer Perez, JJ Perez tweeted out that he's excited for Friday. And many people, myself included, are expecting that to be related to him either decommitting from Florida or straight up flipping to Ohio State. Either way, he's someone that we have for a long while now viewed as someone who will not be in this class. And so it's going to be one of those times where there's going to be trolls tweets about losing him. Who cares? Move on. Don't feed into their trolls. Just want to throw that out there now already. But Florida now has, on 3 at least, their second highest rated player there. Highest rated player in the 2026 class for Florida, CJ Bronaugh. Second highest rated, Kendall Gervil. Which I am so sorry if I'm mispronouncing his name. I'm very sorry there. I will try to get proper pronunciation of his last name, but I think it's Gervil. But yeah, Kendall Guervil is now the second highest rated player in the Florida Gators 2026 recruiting class and won't wind up there just because I do think that these rankings are going to change. Other players are going to climb, and hopefully Florida is going to add some more elite talent. But Blue Chip Billy gets the blue chip again there. And again, like I said, I know people are going to talk about how there's, it's basically half of the class is blue chips right now, and usually it's higher than that. It's going to be higher than that. Just let the recruiting services update, and we'll be good. You'll get over it there. But Florida on 3 is now ranked the 15th ranked class nationally, 6th in the SEC, which obviously love to see climbing up, but need to continue that kind of progress. It's just like no serious Florida Gators fan is happy with 15th nationally, 6th in the SEC, right? On 24/7, Florida is 17th nationally, and Kendall Guervil there is also second highest ranked commit behind CJ Brono. And Florida, this is something we talked about a lot, where this was Texas, this was Florida, and Florida State was reportedly in there. They were talked about in this recruitment. He put them as the type 3, and it kind of just didn't really feel like it was going to happen. It kind of felt like Florida State wasn't actually in this. Part of that is because they are nothing compared to either of the two other programs that were in this with Florida. Okay, and Rob S. just said that 17th on 24/7 now. They just updated it. But yeah, I think part of the reason why Florida State wasn't actually feeling like they were in there is because they're not actually feeling like they're a competitive program with Florida or Texas at that. Big dogs barking, not 2-win teams with pipsqueak quarterbacks that want to talk trash about Alabama when you're probably going to get dusted and demolished in front of your own home crowd. But who's counting? Who's keeping track, right? Who's really paying attention to that? But Kendall Gervil is paying attention to being a Florida Gator, and that's what he's going to be. And so Florida there, I don't care about the rankings, Jim. Get over it. That's my stance on it. Florida adds Kendall Gervil, and that's huge for the defensive line class that has been lacking that top defensive line talent, and Kendall Gervil is that. Okay, you're not looking at Florida and Texas talking money, getting into it without talent like that. And if anything, let's look at it this way. This was very publicly an NIL recruitment toward the end, right? And I will say this as well. I know that there's a lot of people who talk about the NIL aspect of this, and I think that there's a lot of people that look at this the wrong way. I think the best way to look at how NIL plays a factor in these recruitments is oftentimes it's not just a kid going, hey, whoever pays me the most, that's where I'm going to go. Oftentimes it's them saying, hey, these are the schools that I like. These are the final 5 schools that I like. This is the order that they're in. And NIL is going to play a factor in that. And so I think that's more likely how it goes than a lot of people just going, oh, NIL was all that mattered. But we do know that NIL was a factor here. Ryan, yes, they're supposed to be. We do know NIL was a factor here. And Florida went out there and won it. And so I'm just curious, for all the people that were complaining and were crying about the boosters and this and that, about the NIL, what now? That's first off. What now? What's the complaint now? And secondly, I think that this should be looked at as a strong case that Florida, it's not about Florida not having the money, right? It's about Florida not wanting to spend the money. And I think that them being willing to spend money on Kendall Gervil, who, again, openly, NIL was a factor here, and they went up against Texas, I think that's a pretty good indicator for how Florida feels about him and how good of a talent he is. Gerald Chapman is going to be a menace with this guy, or I guess I'd be better or more appropriately say that this guy's going to be a menace with Gerald Chapman at the helm. Gerald Chapman, look, we'll see what he is recruiting, right? I'm not going to pretend that he's this immensely talented recruiter. I don't know what he's going to be long-term. What I do know is that developmentally, he's a dude, okay? I know that developmentally, Gerald Chapman's a guy, a monster. And you just got a monster on the line that Gerald Chapman can work with. Like, I'm not usually one that says I want to see freshmen play early, but Kendall Gervil just might be someone that I think can. With Gerald Chapman, if he's an early enrollee, and I think he can get those those like 6-7 months of development before the season starts, I think we're having a conversation there. We are going to get to the chat. I know you guys have been popping off. You've been awesome for early evening on a Wednesday, but we're going to get to the chat in just a second when we get back with Locked On Gators. You ever wish that managing your money just felt easier? With Monarch Money, whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. And Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. So you can track all of your accounts, all of your investments, and all of your spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building your wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year with monarchmoney.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And we're going to get through this chat here. We're going to have a little bit of fun because the Florida Gators just landed another commit and they are balling. I've seen people mention Trenton Henderson in the chat here, and my stance is still the same on Trenton Henderson. He's committing at about 7 p.m. Eastern time. I'm still expecting him to commit to LSU. Whether or not that sticks, we'll see, but I'm still expecting that commitment to go to LSU. That was another NIL battle. I know that people are frustrated with some things. And I know that there's a lot of people, even in this chat, I saw people talk about, edge and D-line value there. Let me put this way. Edge and D-line. Edge and a pass rushing defensive lineman, right? So we're not really talking about nose tackles here, but edge rushers and 3 techs or edge rush and 5 techs, whatever that may be, those guys are going to get paid regardless. They're incredibly valued spots now, and they are both going to be, yes, very valued. Some teams are going to prioritize interior pass rush. Some teams are going to prioritize edge rushers. Some teams are going to prioritize both, but whichever one they have a bigger need for is where they go. So there's all that as far as, the value and all that. I don't think that not giving Trenton Henderson the money that LSU is giving him is a sign that Florida isn't going to land anybody on the edge. And then there's a couple of guys that even if they commit elsewhere today, like Trenton Henderson, I don't think the door is shut for Florida in the future to come knocking and come recruiting there. But I do think that adding Kendall Guervil when your defensive line options and targets were starting to commit somewhere, and for a while it felt like, hey, Florida, Georgia, and Texas are the 3 schools that we're constantly seeing recruiting these big, talented defensive linemen. They're gonna, get divvied up naturally, and it felt like Florida was just not getting any. And so I do think that Kendall Gerville became a bit more of a priority there as guys started falling off the board. Getting to the chat here, Henderson would have been nice, but the edge board looks better than D-line. This is much more important. Sure, I'm not arguing with anybody. If you feel how you feel, that's fine. The way that I look at this is just keep stacking talent and develop the guys, and you'll have elite guys throughout. That's how I kind of look at it. Like Brandon said, the staff will fight to flip Henderson and other recruits all the way up to sign. Yeah, they're not going to back off unless there's a pretty glaring character flaw. They don't really back off of kids like that. Unless there's something that really throws them off, but that's not super common. CAG, you finally get to catch another live. We finally get to do another live. So let's hope all these commits get developed right. I think they will, honestly. Same CAG, I love making the lives. Again, I want to set it where I'm planning on setting up like a weekly live or whatever it is, just to go live and talk Florida Gators football, basketball, baseball, whatever we're going to talk. And so, yeah, we got a bunch of people been waiting all day. Well, I mean, hey, I could have told you that it was going to be 5 p.m. that he was making the announcement. He had that all set up for him there. Great teams are built through the trenches, absolutely. In Florida right now, looking pretty good on the trenches there. Hopefully, we'll continue to develop there. What's everyone think of Steve Spurrier's comments on Arch Manning? He's absolutely right. And if you try to use the Tebow Chris Leak argument, you're wrong and kind of a fool. Just want to throw that out there. Tim Tebow was a true freshman that led the team in rushing touchdowns. Arch Manning was a true freshman that didn't play. Not the same thing, is it? Yeah, didn't think so. People saying that JJ Press can go. Yes. Another coach from the SEC keeps anonymously trash-talking Billy Napier. Heard some people think it's Brian Kelly. Thoughts? Could be Brian Kelly. Could be Hugh Freeze. Could be Kirby Smart. Could be Eli Drinkwitz. I don't know. I'm just trying to name all of the D-bags that I can think of. And it could be any of them. Could be that. That's how I feel about it. If it's Eli Drinkwitz and it's Eli Drinkwitz, he's a D-bag. That's fine. I don't care. I don't like him. I've been very open about that. I had an interaction with him in person, and I almost said a word I'm not allowed to say, but he was one. And so I don't care about him. And I hope that they lose every game for the rest of my life as a university just for hiring him. That's how I feel about it. So that's where I'm throwing it there. Are the rankings updated this month? They're supposed to be updated in July, I think, at least for 24/7. I do think we're going to have others update as well. I just don't want to speak for other sites because I don't know that. I'm just pretty sure 24/7 is this month. After the season finishes and the Gators make the playoffs, our class. Yeah. Well, we won't really definitively know about playoffs for the guys that are early signing, but for February, sure. But I do think that this is a genuine season where, hey, you win some games, especially against like LSU, if Trenton Henderson does commit there, you win some games, you're going to be knocking on the door for these kids right away. Cag, I'm sorry to hear about you having to spend money on the car. That's absolutely a travesty. I think it's still okay to complain about how the money isn't spent. Teams like Bama, OSU, even Texas drop bags and are able to get more than 1 5-star, which isn't cheap. I'm not saying to not complain about it. I'm saying for the people that I think oftentimes we're talking about, like the boosters don't have the money. Be annoyed about the NIL, right? That's fine. Be annoyed about that. But as far as not have the money, I don't think that that's a valid argument. I think it's that they are too fiscally conservative with spending money on recruits. That's what I'll say. But I don't think it's that they don't have the money. Bama getting 4 or 5 stars is wild. Yeah, hopefully that does fall apart. Aren't great pass rushers the third highest paid position on an NFL team, right behind QB and left tackle? Here's the thing. It's QB, it's receiver, it's offensive tackle, it's outside corner, and it's pass rusher. Those are the premium positions. That's it. Like any of those spots, and you can justify getting paid a lot of money. It is. That's how it is. That's how it works out. And honestly, it's not even left tackle anymore. It's just offensive tackle. That's it. Because every team is putting a premium on getting these elite edge rushers. And, then you got to have elite offensive linemen to stop them. So that's how that works. Why do D-line recruits keep considering when they have 5 already in their class? Because why not, right? Like I think a lot of coaches have the general approach of, hey, not everybody we recruit's going to work out. Not everybody we recruit's going to pan out. They're not going to all work as hard as we expect them to. So let's keep just adding elite defensive linemen, elite trench players, and go win games in the trenches where games are won and lost more than any other position except for maybe quarterback. But even then, if your trenches are dog crap, it doesn't matter if your quarterback's good, you're still going to lose. So I think teams are really trying to pressure the trenches, and you pressure defensive linemen because then you go, hey, well, even if we face a good offensive line, we beat the crap out of them and it doesn't matter. Quarterback can't see with tears in his eyes, right? And I think that's an approach we're seeing more of there. Cag said, was Eli Drinkwitz Missouri's coach when Florida and Missouri got into the big brawl after Missouri's late hit on Kyle Trask? I honestly don't remember. I think so. I just don't definitively remember. But yeah, I want to say he was, because I think when I met him was the 2021 Senior Bowl. And so that should have been right after that, if I'm not mistaken. But maybe. Yeah, maybe. Just keep rolling in the commits, keep coming in. That's the thing too. Like Florida right now is 15 commits. I do think that this might be a bigger class than we anticipate, or than we're used to, I'll say. Maybe not anticipate, than we're used to. But don't forget, this is also around where I thought we'd be. We had this conversation with Brian Smith a few weeks ago, where Brian was like, hey, Florida should have like 12 commits by the end of the first week of July. And I said it should be higher. It should be like 16 to 18. And I still think that's where Florida's going to be. So like this is, I know Florida's missed out on kids, but like this is still the expectation of where I thought they'd be. You're not going to land every kid. Let's get real here. But you land guys that are going to make your team better, help you win more games, and that's what they're doing. And so I'm not going to complain about it. Also, it's July, and they're in a hell of a better position than they were last year. So I'm not going to complain about that either. We will be back tomorrow at the absolute latest. Again, I don't think Trenton Henderson's committing to Florida tonight, but if he does, he does. We will be back tomorrow at the absolute latest to talk more Florida Gators football. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olsen. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work for New York Giants on SI, and I'll see you all next time.